That deep bow your dog gives you the second he sees you, chest low to the floor, back and high in the air, front paws sliding forward, is not a stretch. It is a full sentence, and he has been saying it to you almost every day of his life. Stay with this one, because there is a second version of that exact same shape, and it does not mean the same thing at all. Most tutors have never separated the two, and that one gap, thinking every version of this stretch is the same, is exactly why the dangerous version slides right past people for weeks before anyone notices. If you have watched your dog do this 1,000 times and never once thought about what it meant, that is completely normal. Nobody hands you a dictionary for dog body language when you bring a puppy home, or a rescue, or whatever wonderful mess wandered into your life. You are not behind. The fact that you are here, watching a video about understanding your dog more deeply, already says something about the kind of tutor he got lucky enough to have. Here is the belief almost everyone walks around with. Your dog stretches low in front, chest to the ground, rear end up, and you assume he is just working a kink out after a nap, the same way you would stretch your back after sitting too long at a desk. It looks exactly like that. And dogs genuinely do stretch for purely physical reasons plenty of times a day, so the assumption is not a crazy one. To be clear, that ordinary kind of stretch is completely real too. A dog waking up alone on the rug and stretching out his back has nothing to do with any of this. That is just a body starting its day. What we are talking about is the specific version aimed straight at a person, the one that shows up the second eye contact happens. But watch that specific moment again, the one where he first sees you, and the body around the stretch tells a completely different story. The tail is moving, the mouth is loose, sometimes even open in something close to a grin. There is often a little slap of the front paws on the floor, or a small hop, or a happy, high-pitched bark thrown in for good measure. That is not a body working out stiffness. That is a dog performing one of the clearest, most consistent signals in the entire language of dogs, something behavior researchers call a play bow or a greeting bow. It shows up in puppies wrestling with littermates, in grown dogs greeting the humans they trust, even in dogs saying hello to the family cat. It is not random. It is on purpose. It helps to picture it almost like a small bow before a dance. One partner dips low for a second, signaling clearly that whatever happens next is welcome, not a surprise. A dog does something close to that right before he tackles you with affection. And once you see it that way, you cannot unsee it. But knowing what it is only step one. The second step is the one almost nobody teaches, and it is the one that actually matters. Here is why the shape itself matters so much. Dropping the front of the body down while lifting the back end up puts a dog in a position where it physically cannot lunge, chase, or snap without resetting its stance first. In behavior science, that gets called a metasignal, which just means a signal whose whole job is to explain the signals coming right after it. Think of it like the little smiley face at the end of a text message. The words alone could read as teasing or as sharp, but that one small symbol tells you the tone. The play bow does the same work for a dog. It says, whatever comes next, the growling, the chasing, the mouthing, all of it is play, not a threat. That is why puppies use it constantly before rough wrestling with their litter mates, and why grown dogs keep using it with the humans and animals they trust for the rest of their lives. It is, in a way, a small trust fall. A dog only offers that low, vulnerable position to someone or something it feels genuinely safe around. Here is the part that changes everything, though. That exact shape, front down, rear up, can also show up for a reason that has nothing to do with trust or play at all. When a dog's stomach or gut is hurting, stretching the front half of the body forward can ease pressure building in the belly, a little like the way a person might lean forward or curl up to take the edge off a stomach cramp. From across the room, the two can look almost identical. Up close, they never do. Here's a quick way to hold on to the difference. A loose, happy body breathes easy the whole way through the motion, almost like a sigh. A tense one looks like it's holding a breath it can't quite let go of. That single feel, easy versus held, will get you further than memorizing a checklist ever could, and we'll build the full checklist together in a minute. If this is the first time anyone has actually explained what that stretch means, drop where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing that. Subscribing costs nothing and just means you will not miss the next one of these. And if you think another tutor needs to see this before they misread their own dog, a quick like is honestly the easiest way to get it in front of them. So here is how to spot the joyful version in real detail. It happens right when your dog first sees you, at the door, first thing in the morning, the second he is called from another room. The whole body stays loose. The tail is up and moving. Sometimes the whole back half sways along with it. You might get that little paw slap against the floor, or a small forward hop, or a play growl that has none of the low, warning edge of a real growl. And it does not last. A second, maybe two. And then he springs straight into motion, zoomies around the living room, a toy dropped at your feet, a full body jump into your legs. That is a completely healthy dog, doing exactly what dogs are built to do. There is nothing to fix there, nothing to manage, nothing you need to buy for it. It is simply worth noticing and worth answering. Some dogs are just naturally more dramatic about it than others, and that's worth knowing too. A young, bouncy dog might throw a huge theatrical bow multiple times an hour, while an older, more reserved dog might offer a small, quick version once a day and mean exactly the same thing by it. If you ever catch yourself unsure whether what you just saw was the joyful version or something else, the fix isn't to panic over one instant. It's to watch for a full minute instead of judging the first 2 seconds. Personality explains a lot of the difference. A held, stiff, repeated pattern is what actually needs your attention, not an especially enthusiastic bow. And once you can spot that one signal clearly, a fair question comes right behind it. What else has your dog's body been telling you that you have never quite put together? Because this stretch rarely tells the whole story on its own. Here is the part most tutors miss. What you are noticing rarely stands alone. A sign like this usually travels with a few others, small things in your dog's day that only start to make sense once you see them together as one picture. If you are not sure how the pieces fit or which one to start with, we put together a free 2-minute quiz that maps your dog's bigger picture and shows you where to begin. The link is in the pinned comment, or scan the QR code on the screen. Take it after this one though, because the most important part of tonight's video is still coming. Picture a dog like Cooper, a mid-size mixed breed with the kind of stretch that is basically a greeting ritual in his own house. Every single time his tutor walked in from work, Cooper dropped into that same low bow, paws sliding forward across the hardwood, tail thumping so hard it sounded almost like a drum beat. For years, that was the whole story, pure joy, followed 2 minutes later by a game of tug across the living room. Nobody thought twice about it because there was nothing to think about. Then 1 week, the same shape started looking different. He held it longer. His body was not loose anymore. It was stiff, almost braced. A couple of times there was a small groan halfway through it. And here is the detail that actually mattered. It kept happening even when nobody had just walked through the door. Once right in the middle of the afternoon with no one around to greet at all. His tutor almost chalked it up to him just getting a little older, a little creakier, the way anyone might explain away a change in a dog who's never given them a reason to worry before. A phone call and a same-day exam were enough to catch a developing digestive issue early, well before it turned into a middle-of-the-night emergency. And that is the pattern worth borrowing from his story. In most cases like this, catching the change early and getting the vet involved right away leads to a far smoother outcome than waiting to see if it passes on its own. So what exactly should you be watching for before it ever gets that far? This is the part worth slowing down for. The tense version looks like the same shape from a distance, front down, rear up, but everything around it reads differently. The body is stiff instead of loose. The ears might pin back, or the tail drops low and goes still instead of wagging. Sometimes there is whining, or heavier panting than the moment calls for, or repeated lip licking while he holds the position. And instead of one quick pop back into play, he holds it for many seconds, sometimes longer, like he cannot quite get comfortable no matter how he shifts his weight. It also shows up on its own schedule, not just at greetings. Right after a meal, in the middle of the night with nobody around to greet at all, several times in an hour on a bad day. That pattern, more than any single instance, is what separates a happy hello from a body trying to relieve pressure it cannot otherwise get rid of. One stiff, distressed-looking version of this stretch is worth a same-day call to your vet. That is not overreacting. That is exactly the right amount of reacting. And if that stiff stretch shows up alongside a belly that looks swollen or feels hard, retching that does not bring anything up, pale gums, or a dog who genuinely cannot settle or collapses, that is not a wait-and-see situation anymore. That is an emergency, and it means going in immediately. In real veterinary cases, this exact pattern gets tied to things like gastric bloat, pancreatitis, or an intestinal blockage, though only your own vet can tell you which one, if any, is actually behind it for your dog. And if you are staring at your dog right now, honestly unsure which version you are looking at, that uncertainty alone is reason enough to call and describe it, not a reason to wait it out. Vets field these calls constantly, and 2 minutes of you describing what you saw is never a waste of anyone's time. Here is how it tends to build when it gets missed. At first, it is just a signal nobody caught, a small loss, nothing more. Assume every version of this stretch is playful, though, and the first tense repeated episodes get waved off as nothing, which can push back a phone call by days. Left alone longer, something like pancreatitis tends to worsen on its own timeline. Appetite drops, vomiting starts, the dog gets quiet and low energy. And in the most serious version, bloat specifically, the gap between that very first stiff stretch and a genuine crisis can be measured in hours, not days. That is really the whole reason learning to catch this early matters, more than almost anything else in tonight's video. One common mistake worth naming before we get to what actually helps. A lot of tutors, without meaning to, discourage the whole ritual, scolding the jump that follows, brushing past the bow to get the leash on faster, treating the excitement as something to shut down rather than something to meet. None of that is wrong exactly. Boundaries around jumping are fair, but it's worth separating the boundary from the bow itself. The bow isn't the part that needs managing. So here is what to actually do with all of this. When you get the joyful version, the loose, bouncy one, answer it. Crouch down, warm voice, a minute of real attention, or a quick round of play. It does not matter if your dog is 12 pounds or 90. The timing matters more than the size, and meeting that invitation in the first minute is what keeps it strong. Spend about a week just noticing what normal looks like for your own dog, how loose the body is, how long it usually lasts. That baseline is what makes the tense version jump out at you later, and honestly, it usually only takes a few days of paying attention before you can spot it without even thinking about it. If you do see the tense version, resist the urge to handle it yourself at home. No fasting, no sudden diet changes, no over-the-counter remedy. Any of those can delay real care or make certain causes worse. Instead, note when it happened, how often and anything else you saw, appetite, vomiting, a hard belly, and call your vet with exactly that. Large, deep-chested breeds carry extra risk for the more serious causes, though any dog, any size, deserves the same level of attention the moment this pattern shows up. And if a vet visit doesn't turn up anything urgent, but the tense stretching keeps happening over the next couple of days, that's still worth a follow-up call rather than something to just keep watching indefinitely. Age changes the picture a little too, worth a quick word on that. In puppies, an occasional dramatic stretch is almost always just enthusiasm with nowhere to go yet. Their bodies are still figuring out how big their own excitement is. In senior dogs, a stretch that suddenly looks stiffer or shorter than it used to can just as easily be early joint stiffness as anything in the belly, which is exactly why describing the whole picture to your vet, not just the stretch, gets you a faster, more accurate answer than trying to sort cause from symptom yourself. A little goes a long way on the prevention side too. A calmer feeding pace instead of a rushed gulp, skipping hard play right after a big meal, a fairly steady schedule. None of that guarantees anything. It just tends to support a calmer stomach, which is honestly most of what any of us can offer. Since we are already talking about stomachs, a quick safety note worth keeping in your back pocket. Grapes and raisins, onions and garlic, xylitol, sometimes labeled birch sugar, chocolate, and cooked bones that can splinter are all things that can cause or worsen abdominal pain in a dog, and none of them belong anywhere near the bowl, ever. Once you are fluent in reading a loose, relaxed body, you start catching tension everywhere else too. A stiff back during petting, a tucked tail on a walk, sudden reluctance to jump on the couch. Belly discomfort tends to show up as a mood shift as well, quieter, a little withdrawn, less patient with handling than usual. And for what it is worth, none of this requires a calming chew or a posture-correcting harness from the pet aisle, the kind marketed at dogs who stretch dramatically as though the stretch itself were the problem. What actually protects your dog is you, knowing the difference and picking up the phone when it counts. Your vet stays exactly who you call for anything medical, always. There's a nicer side to all this fluency too worth remembering before we wrap up. Reading the calm, relaxed body isn't just about catching problems. It's about catching your dog at his happiest, right when he trusts you completely, which is honestly a pretty good thing to get better at noticing. If you want to actually build this skill instead of just knowing about it, do not try to master both versions tonight. Spend the next few days simply enjoying and noticing the joyful bow until it is second nature. Then start watching for the tense version as its own separate thing. Layer it in slowly, or you will end up second-guessing every normal stretch your dog does, and that is not the goal here. One number worth keeping in the back of your mind, in severe cases of bloat specifically, things can move from a first stiff stretch to a genuine emergency in as little as 1 to 2 hours. That is really the whole reason tonight's video exists. And here's a gentler number to close on. Most healthy dogs offer some version of that joyful bow multiple times a day, which means you don't have to wait for some special moment to practice reading it. You get new chances to notice basically every single time you walk back into the room. Tell me one word for how your own dog does this stretch. Wiggly, dramatic, sleepy, shy, whatever fits him best. I read every single one of these. If this changed how you will watch your dog tonight, subscribing helps more than you would think. And that free 2-minute quiz is still sitting in the pinned comment whenever you are ready for it. Wherever your dog is right now, probably somewhere close by, go rub behind those ears for a second. He has been talking to you this whole time. Now you actually know what he is saying.